The final one of these additional little screencasts we're going to do today is about sampling, and Raja will talk to you in more detail about this next week or the week after. Sampling is quite important, as if you get the sample right, then it helps to increase the validity of your data. And one thing that we need to think about is how we actually fix all these things together, so how different methods can work collaboratively and how you might use different sampling techniques to address populations via questionnaires. That might be a bigger sample compared to a smaller set of focus groups or interviews. So each of these different techniques will have more appropriate forms of sampling, and we'll go through some of them today. But there are a number of sort of key issues and key questions that we need to think about. So first of all, who might your subject participants be? So who do you need to talk to? Are they going to be professionals? Are they going to be practitioners? Are they going to be the public? Are they going to be students? So this is something that you need to think about when you're generating your research questions, as it will be important to find out who they are at the start. How will you go about engaging them? So will it be via email or by social media platform? Do you already have contacts who you can go through to do this? And of course, what materials might you need to review and generate? So what sampling materials or what materials for instance interview schedules or questionnaire sheets do you need to have ready for them? And all these things are part of the preparation and the logistics. Then we need to think about, do you have access to the people, the evidence and documentation you need? It's a bit like when we were talking about documentary analysis. Is the information available in public? If not, how will you get it? How will you access people in different organisations? Do you already have existing contacts that you can work with? Or will these all be new contacts that you have to generate? So again, it might be about understanding who the key people are, who might act as what we call a gatekeeper, to give you access to other people, and so on. And of course, something that people always forget about is how long will this take, and it can take quite a while to generate a substantive population of people to participate in your research. So it's always best to plan ahead and be prepared for change. And so a lot of these have issues about viability and validity. So the bigger the sample, potentially the greater the validity, and taking the time to establish the parameters, so what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, will help your study in the long run. So those sort of basic questions we can come back to over time. So in terms of who, it will depend on your research questions and what you want to ask and why you want to ask those questions. So it might be experts in fields of environment, real estate and planning. It might be the public or lay people, so it might be an issue about cycling provision or waste recycling, and you might want to know what people think about those sort of things. So the sort of flyers you might get from local councillors might be some of this. You might want to talk to politicians and other elected officials, so members of Manchester City Council, for instance, to get their views on big strategic policy issues or development issues, because potentially they might be slightly different from public officers or workers, so planners or people who work for public sector organisations. You might also wish to talk to experts in the private sector. So again, the same process goes through about why you're picking those people, what value they have to what you're doing, and how you might engage with them. And what you have to think about here is that each of these different sets of people will have very different ways of working. So some people might be very busy and therefore can only give you 15-20 minutes. Some people might want to talk to you for hours on end, depending on what the topic is. So you need to work around the disciplinary and sectoral differences here. So again, being prepared to modify your sort of approach to these different stakeholders would be really important. And again, this is why thinking ahead and being professional about it is quite important. And so you might want to engage them differently in order to get different information out of them. You still have to be professional, have to be polite, you have to be honest with them, but you might talk to experts in a more technical language than you would for people from the public who might not understand or need to know what the technicalities are of certain terms or certain terminology. Whereas if you're talking to a planner or developer about land release and greenbelt, there might be far more intricate discussion of the terminology. So in terms of the sample, there's lots of different people you might wish to speak to from across the public and private sector, from the environment sector, from other parts of the academic world, from different student bodies, from the public. So it's always better to think a bit more broadly and then focus in rather than excluding people straight away, unless there's a good reason to. The next bit to think about is what. So what is the focus of your research, and how will you identify who you need to engage with? So it's back to the question of how big is your sample. And again, you need to think about the issues of validity. So how many people do you talk to create a value to the data that you collect? And at what point do the results that you're seeing become transferable to other locations? And this, again, as we said previously, isn't simple. So more is not nominally better, but you also have to think about quality just in terms of not just quantity. So if you're doing street surveys or surveys with the public, then it might be 50 to 100 samples that you need. If you're looking at industry people, it might be slightly smaller because you might not have such a big sample. And again, within this, you need to think about what the composition of the sample will look like. So are you wanting to get something which is representative of society in terms of age, gender, sexuality, incomes, education, or are you just looking at whoever's available? And if you're doing work with experts, that might be based around their expertise or their job titles or the focus of their work, rather than just in terms of their socio-economic or demographic characteristics. And again, this has to be reflective of the focus and the breadth of the investigation that you're doing. You also have to think about how you get access to these people, so the logistics of it. So do you have the contacts already? Will you have to generate new contacts? And if so, how would you do it? Will it be via what we call gatekeepers, so people you might know who can give you an in to that organisation? So it might be a planner in the council, get you into somebody else. Is it about people you may have worked with or have seen coming into the university to give talks? So there might be a link there. But you need to think carefully about who the people are you're going to talk to and how you're going to get hold of them, because some people can be very slow at replying to emails, some people won't reply. You have to be quite careful about what you want to ask them and how you want to do it, because some people might be quite sensitive to particular issues, particularly if they're ongoing in terms of policy developments. So the logistics of the sampling can be quite long-winded, but you need to get it sorted and you need to think carefully about it to make sure it improves the validity and the transferability of the results. Then when you have found your sample, you need to start to think about what questions you can ask them, and it will be the same for each of these different groups of people, or will you have to modify what you say just to be more appropriate or be more directed? And how will you arrange the sample and the research? So how many people do you need? Where will you go and sample these? Will they be public places, private buildings? Will they be in somebody's office? And when will they occur? So how are you going to go and do it? So the what tends to be about the who's and how many's and access to those people, but those are sort of logistical issues rather than more of the thematic ones. You might also wish to think about doing case studies. So rather than trying to look at the whole population, it might be about a particular subset. So it might not be about the whole of Manchester, but a particular area of Manchester and how people engage with a certain theme or idea. And there are a number of different ways in which you can start to approach this. So and look at case studies. So case studies can be exploratory, descriptive and explanatory. So it actually gives you the bigger picture and starts to describe what's going on. But they can also be intrinsic, instrumental or collective. So something that's more nuanced and more focused. So about the minutiae of what's happening in a particular location. One thing that we have tried to encourage is that if you are going to use case study material, that it is grounded in a set of wider debates, that you're using the case study to explore some of these bigger ideas, because it's more difficult to do that the other way around. So it can be quite hard to generalize from one case study to another because of the nature or the context of the work that you're doing. So every year we see students wanting to look at Manchester against another global city. So it might be back Shanghai or Beijing or Delhi or New York. And every year we advise against that because the nature of the cities in terms of population, in terms of politics, the economic growth are not the same. So case studies you can start to sort of see how they might fit into a broader conversation, but you need to be careful. And so some people will do a number of case studies that look at similar or comparable issues across urban areas. So it might be a case study of 4 or 3 different local planning authorities in Greater Manchester to look at how they all fit with the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework, for instance. But you need to think carefully about the amount of time you've got, the access you might need, and how you might go about doing these. So case studies can be very good at sort of homing in onto 1 or 2 particular things in a particular area, but you need to work out how it then can relate back to the wider conversations that you're having. And then we need to think about where and when. So what factors will influence the logistics and development and implementation of the project? So where are you going to go and do your sampling? Will it be in an office, in a cafe, a public space, someone's home? We would advise against someone's home because it's a lot less safe because it's private. But someone's office is quite common. Cafes, just think about the amount of noise that there might be, and particularly if you're recording on a dictaphone, how that might impact on the sound quality. And again, in the public place, if you're going to be sampling people about a phenomenon in a public place, what time? Will it be early in the morning? Will it be lunchtime? Will it be in the evening? Are people more or less likely to say yes to participate at certain times of the day? And there's extensive literatures on how these things work and why. You also need to think about external factors to take account for. So access into buildings, access into a population, noise, interruptions. So if you're doing sampling on parks, people say, are you the council? Because you're doing something that involves a clipboard, so they aren't very happy. Will there be enough people? So invariably, if you're doing questionnaires, it might be quite difficult to get the right number. So you have to think carefully about, again, the location, the timing, and those sort of things. And that's why a lot of people are veering towards online surveys, because it reaches more people. But there are issues about validity there that we've spoken of before. And then health and safety, both of yours and the participants. So will they be safe? Are you going to try and survey people at night, which we would advise against, and such like. So you have to take into account issues of time and days of the week, so days versus night, weekend versus weekdays, and invariably we would say to be more valid and transferable, you would do different times of day over a prolonged period of time, but that might not necessarily be possible, particularly if you want to look at, say, the nighttime economy. You have to go and do it at night time, or people doing park run, you have to go and do it on a Saturday morning. So issues about, again, health and safety and access and weather issues might play a part here. So be prepared to be outside and to get wet. And of course, there's always the question of, should you do it on your own or with somebody else? It's quite difficult to do it with somebody else because they might be doing their own projects, but you need to think about your safety when you're doing these things. And so finally, we need to talk about how. So is it research-led identification, so convenience sampling, where you pick the sample based on what you think is best for the project? I think a lot of you might be doing this because that will gear towards identifying experts or different people who might be able to help. A random sample done properly is quite difficult because it has to be randomised, and there are certain techniques that you can look for. And in Robson's book, it's the old version, there's lots of discussions of there. Stratified or proportional sampling is quite popular, so you take a proportion of males versus females, you take a proportion of people of different age groups, but you have to know the whole population to do that. That can be quite hard. Or systematic sampling, if you are going to look at every 10th house or every 10th person that comes across, that might be one way of doing it. Another common way that actually happens quite a lot is snowball sampling, where you talk to one person, they give you somebody else's name, and you start to generate a network through that. And that's a little bit like researcher-led identification. All of these sampling approaches have benefits. All of them have drawbacks. So it sort of comes down to the way in which you want to plan and structure your project, and the utility versus the logistics of how these things might happen. Some will take longer than others, some will be less productive than others, but you shouldn't dismiss them just because they're harder. You need to think about what is the most appropriate technique for you to do to sample in the most effective way. Okay, that's the end for today. Raji will go through this in more detail in one of the classes. I hope you found them useful, and we'll see you all soon.